Welcome to part one of unit testing. In this section here, we're going to be discussing the project structure and also not forgetting where to get the project. So the source, our source code. We're going to be going through the source code, the project structure, and some of the considerations that were taken in order to ensure that we follow the conventions. So without any further ado, let me just take you through to the project. And just hold on one moment. I'm going to open my Chrome. There we go. So my Chrome there. And there's a link. I'm going to just do that there. So you just go to github.com/Sekhodi Academy/XUnit. And you will find the Git repository there. Okay. So depending on whether you have Git or not, you can get your code by just going onto the link here and using your Git to download the code, or you can just download the zip. It's as simple as that. But I'm going to do it via Git here. So just in case you guys wondering what Git is, well, that's a separate session and it's not going to be covered within this course here. If you'd like me to cover it in details, what it is, basically just let me know in the comment section, and hey, we might just come up with a video in the future for that. But for now, I'm just going to copy that there. Then I'm going to go onto my desktop, right click on my desktop here. Let me just create a folder here, and I believe we will call it unit testing, I don't know, series, I don't know, whatever you might want to call it really. Okay, I think I have unit testing series somewhere here. So we'll just say unit testing project. Okay. Then I'm going to go inside there and I'll right click and go git bash here. This will open up, we'll pop open this, sorry about that, it opened on my other screen. And we'll just go git clone and we'll just paste. Okay, once you're done pasting, you just press enter and your code should be downloaded there. So what I'll do is I'll just go and say XUnit. You should have this folder here with all these folders and files in there. And we'll open our, let me see, let me already just open it right away. I think I only have one version of Visual Studio, so just making sure that it opens in the community Visual Studio version, so I don't have to get you guys to be seeing things that you don't have on your version and we're having a back and forth. Okay, as I open the project, right, or rather my solution, you will see at the bottom there that Visual Studio was restoring all the packages. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. The first part of our solution here, by the way, I'm using Visual Studio 2019. This is the community version, okay? So it's asking me to update. I'm not going to do that. You never know what happens with these updates during video. So I'm using Visual Studio 2019. So I have testing.basics here, and I have testing.basics.tests. So basically what happens is, whatever our project name is, say, for example, my project was Tlhogi's e-commerce website or web application. So my testing project will be Tlhogi's e-commerce website or web application.test. So that's basically that. But you will see that I said .test. I did not specify that it's actually unit tests or integration tests or any other kind of test there, right? And the reason being, obviously, I'm just writing, I'm not following those convention to the T, basically, because I'm only going to be showing you guys how to do unit testing, and also part of them might just be integration tests, who knows. But I'm just showing you the part of unit testing. So I'm not going to be too finicky about it because there's no separation in this case as to what I'm doing. But what I want to do is show you the unit test, what are unit tests, and why you should write them, and basically get you guys to buy into this whole unit testing thing. Okay, so we're gonna go through to our production code before we open the unit test project. So on our production code, we have about 3 folders. One is bank, the other one is math, the other one is services, and we have program.cs, right? So program.cs is just a file that you will find in my console application here. I wrote a console application because it's much more easier to focus on what we need to focus on, basically. So you don't have all the UI related code that might just take away from what I need to show you guys. That's the first thing. Okay, and ideally, console applications are much faster for me to even launch here. So that's part of the reason why it's easier to show you guys using console applications rather than any other type of application. Okay, so firstly, we have bank here. So bank, I could have just named it ATM really, to be quite honest, because I'm simulating a scenario, or rather code, that goes with the banking kind of related application, right? So if I go in here, we have a folder that says exceptions, so I won't cover what that is. So, but what it is basically just the exception that you might like to throw. So I just wrote my own custom exceptions in there. So we have bank account.cs, and we have bank account part 2. So that's a different one. We'll talk about that later on. And we have math, which is just a calculator. And we have notification service inside our services folder there. Okay, so what notification is, it just have some of our helper functions or class that has code to simulate the SMS, sending SMSs or emails, basically. Let me just open that. I don't have the implementation, but it's basically methods that say send email or send SMS, and I have another method here that says notify all channels, which essentially is supposed to be calling all these other functionalities. You'll send email and send SMS, that code. Okay, so let's go down to math. Under math, it's just basically our calculator. So our calculator class has about, how many methods here? About 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 methods, right? We have add, we have multiply, we have divide, and we have subtract. Okay, so that's basically that. And the only difference between, despite the actual difference between adding, minusing, and multiplying, the only difference as far as the code here is the divide part of it. On the divide portion, we have an exception that is thrown in here. We have an if statement, and we're throwing an exception, which is different to all the other methods. All the other methods, they just take the number and then they do the operation that they're meant to do. So, but divide, because we cannot divide number by 0, so that's why we did that. Just so as well, should we be writing code for this, we can know how much code we're writing for this versus how much code you'll be writing for that, or rather test code, so to say, right? Okay, but for now, I'm going to close that. And I'm also going to close this one here, our services. And I'm going to go into our bank account. Inside our bank account there, we have how many methods here? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 methods, basically, right? And we have about 2 fields and 1 property. Okay, 2 private fields to be precise. And we have our constructor here, which takes in the balance. And as you create an instance of our class there, it will then ask you to give it a balance so it can have the initial balance. So it can be 0, it can be however much you want to start your balance, your account with, basically. Then we have our deposit method here. Then we have our withdraw, our notify clients, which is just private, and our set withdrawal limit and get daily, your daily withdrawal limit and get your balance. Okay, so I'm going to start with the deposit here because I feel like this is the method that we're going to start with. Even when we're writing our code there. So our unit test, so to say, right? So deposit has about 2 if statements here. And we then take so the 2 if statements just for us to be a little bit defensive there to make sure that we get the right values. So we don't want anybody passing in negative numbers or passing in a zero amount, and essentially we increasing our balance with whatever that amount is. So it's just a little bit of defensive coding there, making sure that prior to us operating on those numbers or doing whatever operation that we need to do, we have the right set of data or the right set of values, right? So that's what we do in there. And then once we are past this portion here, we take the amount that's been passed in and we adding that amount onto our current balance. So like I said when we started off, that our constructor requires you to actually start up with a balance. Say, for example, now, as you say, new bank account and you pass in 500 Rand. I'm going to use rands here because I'm in South Africa. And hey, that's my currency over here. If you're saying 500 Rand as an opening balance, and then you pass in, let's say, another 500 Rand, you're depositing it. So essentially that should equal to 1,000 Rands. And once that is done, that portion there, we then call this method here called notify client. Notify client just takes in a string, which is essentially the message that I want to send out, right? So it will say, your balance is, and then it will say whatever the balance is. So in this case, because we had an opening balance of 500 Rand and we deposited 500 Rand, it should say you have your account balance is 1,000 Rands, right? So then when we look at this notified client here, which is just a private method, so I'm not gonna go into the difference between private and public methods here, because I'm assuming that you already know that. But if you guys want me to go through that, hey, just let me know in the comment section as well. Then I can create a little bit of a tutorial there, taking you through the difference between private, public, protected, all these access modifiers basically, right? But in this case, I'm not going to take you through that. So notify client, like I said, is a private method and it's void as well. So that means it doesn't return any value. So what we're going to do here is we're going to new up a new notification service, which is what I was explaining earlier on, what the class that I told you guys about that is responsible for sending out notification. So it could be email notification or SMS notification. So what we're doing here is we're newing up the new notification service. Then we call the notify all channels. So notify channels, as I've shown you guys, that I had about two methods: send email and send SMS. And the third one was send, it was calling both of those methods basically to just say notify all channels. So that's basically that. If I wanted to just notify via email, it would be that I would send the email or I would send SMS if needed be. But now I just want to send both, hence the notify all channels. Okay, so, and that's basically that. We send an SMS. And the reason I'm actually even doing this here is to show you guys that unit testing is basically the concept that says I only want to test the class that I'm currently focusing on. What do I mean by that? If you think about it, right now our sole focus should be on bank account. Okay, nothing else. Bank account. I have to make sure that bank account is doing what it's supposed to be doing here. Okay, and as you guys can see here, I have I mean, some of this is redundant here, the if statements and all of that. So as we're gonna try and rewrite this and make it a little bit better, and also just showing you the importance of unit testing as well, to say we can go about refactoring our code basically with confidence without worrying if we didn't break anything. Okay, so but nonetheless, it will be us focusing on this code here, because if you think about it, from here up to this point, this is what the deposit method is responsible to do. It's supposed to just check if you're passing in the right amount, and if the amount is in the rightful state, or you passing in the right amount basically, then it should just add that amount to your balance. And that's about it. If you think about it, that's the whole idea of depositing. Calling notified client, yes, we do that, but this functionality here does not belong to the deposit method, if you think about it, or the bank account as a whole. Okay, so here all we're doing is we're reaching out to another class. If I go in here, we're reaching out to this class here, notification service, okay, to say, hey, please help us out here. We are done doing what we need to do. Please take this this message here and send it out. But the important thing here is to know that this is done by a different class and not by the bank account class, okay? And therefore, we're not going to be testing this class here or that class, this functionality, okay? The reason being, we assume that notification service has its own unit test written for it, okay? And likewise, we're going to write unit tests specifically for bank account. So, and part of that is that if this part here fails, we don't want it to make our test to fail, because if it does fail, for example, if the one of the services, like one of the channels, like your SMS or your email is down and we can't send an email out, we are going to get an exception. And that's basically what I was trying to simulate here, to say, okay, to comment this part out here and just throw an exception here to show you that, okay, once the email is down or any of those channels are down, then we are not going to get, from our test perspective, we're not going to get what this, what this deposit method of ours is doing. We're not going to get that, because the deposit is supposed to just take the amount, your balance, and plus whatever you passing in as the deposit amount, right? So that's what it's supposed to be doing. So if it does that successfully, and then we get a failure here in terms of we didn't send out the SMS, or the SMS service or email was down, we're going to get an exception, and that exception is going to cause our test to fail, and that shouldn't be the case. And I'll show you guys as we go along. So right now, this was just a walk through our production code as to what we have, and we're going to go into the second part where we'll explain this here, the test project rather, right? And some of the tools that we're using there, and the considerations, and some of the consideration we took while obviously choosing those tools. And I'll see you guys on the next part. Thank you very much for being with me. Botsatlogi.